The first chart we're going to create is going to be a bar chart. First, we have to select the data that we want to include in our chart. We will of course use this table for that, but not the whole table. In column A, we have various advertisement channels. For example, Google ads, Facebook ads, cold calls, email marketing, or TV advertisements. In column B, we see the number of customers that were reached through their respective ad channels. In column C, we see the number of customers reached in percentages. For example, 256,000 customers were reached through Facebook advertisements, and this 256,000 is 20.05% of all the customers reached. In column D, you see how much money we spent on each advertisement channel. And in column E, you see how much money it cost to reach one customer through a respective advertisement channel. We're going to create a bar chart that visualizes how much it costs to reach one customer through each advertisement channel. Select any cell in your table and then press Ctrl A. Now your whole table has been selected. In the bottom right corner, you see an icon, and this is the icon for the quick analysis command. Let's click on it. And actually we could just quickly add a bar chart here. This would be the bar chart. We will not do that because we want to check more options first for creating a chart. But the quick analysis tool can be very useful in certain situations. It suggests some options for formatting as well, so for conditional formatting or for showing some totals. For example, the sum of each column. But of course, now we are talking about charts, so let's just leave the quick analysis tool. You can hover outside it and then click on any cell. Of course, now our table is not selected. But the thing is that we don't need our whole table, so select cell A1, press and hold the left mouse button and select the whole column, so from cells A1 to A8, and then release the left mouse button. And now press and hold the Control key and do the same with column E. So press the left mouse button while you're holding your Control key and select the whole column. Select cells E1 to E8, and you can release the Control key. These two columns will be enough for us for our first bar chart. Notice that because we didn't select continuous cells, the quick analysis tool does not appear. But we don't need it. What we need is to navigate to the Insert tab, and we have this Charts command group here. We can check the recommended charts, or we can hover over to these smaller buttons and search for the bar chart. So it says Insert Column or Bar Chart, and we can click on this button. And in the third row, we have options for bar charts. If I hover over the clustered bar option, I immediately get a preview of what the chart would look like. There is also the stacked bar option, but with this data there is not much difference between the two options. And there is the 100% stacked bar, but this is not something I would like to use with this data. There are also options for 3D bar charts, but they are basically the same as the ones from the row above, but they have a nice 3D effect. We also have an option below, More Column Charts, and we can open the Insert Chart dialog and we can see more options. Let's click on it, and now we have this Insert Chart dialog, and there are two tabs, the All Charts tab and the Recommended Charts tab. Now let's close this, and let's click on the Recommended Charts command. And again, we have this Insert Chart dialog or window opened. And on the Recommended Charts tab, Excel makes a few recommendations to us. If you click on each recommendation, you see what the data would look like or what the chart would look like. Let's go to the All Charts tab, and let's select the bar option. So these are the bar charts. And these are the 6 options that we have already seen. But actually each option for the bar chart comes in 2 versions, let's say. And if I hover over them, then I will get a preview of what the chart would look like. Don't forget that the underlying data are the same for both versions. So we could actually choose this chart and make it look like this chart on the left side, and vice versa. Now I think for this data, the best option is this one on the left side, so it is selected, and I will click on OK, and it will get inserted onto my worksheet. Okay, so now we have inserted our first bar chart, and we've seen that Excel provides several ways for inserting a chart quickly. So now you know where to search if you want to insert a chart, bar chart or any other chart for that matter. We have successfully inserted our first bar chart, but it is kind of in the way. I don't like it that it hides some of the values of our table, so let's move it under our table. Our chart is currently selected. You can tell this by seeing these circles or handles on its border. I can click outside of my chart, so it will not be selected anymore. But in order to move my chart, it doesn't matter if it's selected or not. What we need to do is to hover our mouse over the chart, and when the cross symbol appears with these 4 arrows that point in 4 directions, then we can press and hold the left mouse button. Now the chart is actually selected, and you see that the mouse cursor disappeared, and I can just drag my chart where I want it to be. I will just drag it to row 10, let's say. I've just released my left mouse button, so now my chart is under my table. So I align my chart to row 10, but it's important to note that my chart is not in row 10 per se. The chart is kind of over the rows, so it's kind of over the worksheet. When your chart is selected, you can see it's automatically assigned name in the name box, so this chart is called Chart 1. Excel automatically assigns names to your charts. Chart names can be useful if you want to manipulate your charts in your VBA code. Now, of course, we are not interested in it, but it's good to know that your charts have names. And of course, these automatically assigned names can be changed as well. But now it doesn't really matter what the name is, so I will just leave it be. When working with charts, there are many people who don't like to see these grid lines in Excel. What are around the cells are actually grid lines and not borders. Our cells in the table have borders, and they are thicker than the grid lines. If you're bothered by the grid lines, you can go to View, and once you deselect your chart, the grid lines option will be available, and if you uncheck it, then the grid lines disappear. But notice that our borders are still there, and it's good. I'm actually not bothered by the grid lines, but I agree that the worksheet looks better without them if we have a chart on it. So I will not recheck this option. Let's select our chart, and let's make it a bit bigger, so let's resize it. We can use these handles so we can hover over them, and when these double arrows appear, we can start resizing. Of course, I can make it wider or narrower if I take this handle. You have to press and hold the left mouse button and then release it once you are at the desired width. Let's make the chart a bit higher or taller as well. I think this is a nice size for our data. Notice that once a chart is selected, there are 2 new tabs on the ribbon, Chart Design and Format. If I deselect the chart, these new options disappear, but if I reselect it, these new options appear. Let's select the Format tab, and on the right side you see that we could adjust the height and the width of the chart here as well. We could just use the arrows to increase or decrease the size. I think I actually didn't change the size, but it's good to know that there is this size command group for changing the chart. I mean resizing the chart, but you can also use the handles. So we inserted this chart, resized it, moved it under our table, and now it's time to discuss what we actually see in the chart. The different parts of the chart are called chart elements in Excel. If you hover your mouse over your chart and then you don't move it, a pop-up text appears which will tell you which chart element your mouse cursor is currently hovered over. So this is called the chart area, which is basically our whole chart. We could change the background for a whole chart, for example, if we formatted the chart area. If I hover my mouse over this cost per customer USD text, then you see that that is actually the chart title element. On the left, you see our advertisement channels listed, and these are called categories in our chart. So these advertisement channels are now the categories, and they are on the vertical axis of the chart. So this is the vertical axis. Let's go to the bottom of the chart, and this is the horizontal axis. And these numbers that you see are the values of the axis. Of course, both the values and the categories come from our underlying data or underlying table here. Now I have hovered over the plot area. If I click with my left mouse button, then the plot area gets selected. And by the way, on the Format tab, there is this box, Chart Elements box, and the currently selected chart element is shown here. So now I'm in the plot area. The plot area is where our bars are. Basically, the plot area is where the graphical representation of our data is. So we could argue that this is the most important part of a chart. But of course, all the chart elements are important. In the plot area, currently, we have some major grid lines. So these are called the horizontal axis major grid lines or value axis major grid lines. And of course, you see that we have the value 4, and there is a grid line for showing where the value 4 is, and there is a grid line for showing where the value 5 is, value 6, and so on and so on. And of course, we also have our bars. Our bars represent the data series. You see that the series name is cost per customer in USD, the series point or category is TV ads, and the series value is 5.88. The series, of course, is the column E in our case. Our chart is basically representing the values from column E. And in a bar chart, the series are represented as bars. So actually it would have been more correct if I had said that this top bar represents the value 5.88 and it belongs to the TV ads category. And this bar is a unit of the cost per customer USD series. Notice that when my chart or an element of my chart is selected, Excel highlights the underlying data, so Excel highlights the cells from my table. The categories are highlighted in purple, so they have this nice purple border. The values have this nice bluish border, and cell E1 has this red border, and this is the series name. If I hover my mouse over a bar, then you see that the series name is cost per customer in USD. Excel is great at providing these visual aids, and it can be quite useful to see the link between our data and the chart that we created based on it. Let's talk about what Excel displays in this chart. Of course, this is quite straightforward. We see our categories or ad channels on the left. Each of the categories has a bar, and these bars are of different lengths. And of course, these bars represent the values from column E. We immediately see that TV advertisements and newspaper advertisements are the most expensive. We have to spend $6 to reach one customer through these channels. It also stands out that the email marketing is extremely cheap. I cannot even select this bar actually, it's so narrow. But we can also quickly infer that Google ads are approximately 50% cheaper than newspaper ads or TV ads. The values of course help us a lot, so we see that in order to reach one customer through a newspaper ad we have to spend $6, but we only have to spend $3 if we want to reach one customer through Google advertisements. But we have these grid lines in the plot area, and they're also quite helpful actually. So we see that the value 3 intersects with the Google Ads bar, and the Google Ads bar goes just a bit beyond the value 3 or a bit beyond this grid line. Also notice that the starting value is 0, but the final value or the last value is 7, which is higher than the highest value we have in our table. So the highest value we have in our table is a bit less than 6. However, when Excel creates a chart, then the final value is higher than our highest value. This, I think, is a good feature, and it makes our chart a bit more compact. A great thing about charts is that if I choose the underlying data, then actually the chart will be automatically adjusted. In cell E7, I have a very simple formula, so let me just change the value in cell D7 to 100,000, and I hope you notice that the value in E7 was automatically updated, but more importantly, our email marketing bar automatically widened. So now it represents or visualizes the value 1.15. When I click on one of the bars and select the series, you can check in the formula bar what Excel does to create this series. Now I don't think this is something that you should create manually, but actually it is just a piece of information that you might find interesting. Let's see what happens if I change a value so that it will be greater than 7, so it will be greater than the highest value that our chart provides. I will change the overall cost of newspaper ads to maybe 600,000. And you see that now the new value is almost 9. However, Excel has dynamically adjusted our chart, which is quite cool. So now the new highest value is 10. And now it's not a problem that newspaper ads cost more than $7, so they just go beyond the value 7 and they stop short of 9. But still, because Excel increased the highest value on the horizontal axis, even the newspaper ads bar is far from it, or relatively far from it. Let's select our chart and let's go to the Chart Design tab and let's check out some useful commands. There is a command for moving the chart. Move this chart to another sheet or tab in the workbook. This is not something I want to do, but it's good to know that there is a separate command for that in Excel. There is a change chart type command, so we could actually quickly change this chart. And for example, if I choose a column chart, then you see what the data or what the chart would look like if we switched to a different chart type, now a clustered column chart. I don't want to change the chart type, so I will click on cancel, because I think that the bar chart is perfect for our data. I think I mentioned previously that I like the bar chart because it is sort of a race. I imagine each bar racing with the other bars. Of course, the wider the bar, the higher the value. And it's like all the bars are striving to get to the right side of the chart. Interestingly, in our scenario, actually, the wider the bar, the more expensive the respective advertisement channel. So actually, shorter the bar, the better for us. We also have a select data command, and if I click on it, the select data source dialog or window appears. In this window, you see the chart data range. And actually we selected two separate data ranges, so column A and column E, and you see that these two ranges are separated by a comma. We could change the chart data range, but we don't have to do it, of course. What is more interesting for us is this legend entries series box and the horizontal category axis labels box. So now our series is the cost per customer in USD, so the values from column E, and our categories are from column A. We could edit the categories or edit the series, or we can even remove the series or add series. We don't want to do any of that now. What is more interesting that we could click on the switch row column command. Let's do that actually. And now you see that our category is a cost per customer in USD and our series are our previous categories. I don't like it, so we will switch it back. But let's click on OK for now. But now you see that the cost per customer USD cell is highlighted in purple, so it is our category, our one category on the horizontal axis. Our values are the same, so they come from column E, the range E2 to E8. But now our series come from column A. And if I hover over the bars, you see that we have a series TV ads, and we have a series email marketing, and another series newspaper ads, and so on and so on. If you remember, when we inserted the chart, let's go to the recommended charts command and to the all charts tab. The clustered bar chart had two options. Now these were the same options, but actually this one was on the left side and the current one was on the right side. But now I think you see that these two versions are basically two different interpretations of our data. For this data, I think that this interpretation is better, so the previous one. But Excel can offer an alternative interpretation of the data, and sometimes that alternative interpretation is the one that you actually want to see. I will click on Cancel, and I will go back to the Format tab, to the Chart Design tab, and I will click on the Switch Row Column command, and now we are back to our original chart. I will click on the Select Data command again, so you see that this Switch Row Column command is the same as this command here on the Chart Design tab. You can click on this Hidden and Empty Cells button, and you have some options for how to show empty cells. We don't have any empty cells in our underlying data or underlying table, so it doesn't concern us, but it's good to know where to find these Hidden and Empty Cells settings. Let's click on Cancel, and I will click on Cancel again. Select the chart, then go to the Format tab, and let's check the available chart elements in the Chart Elements box. Now if you select, for example, the chart title element, it will be selected, and there is a command Format Selection. If you click on it, the Format Chart Title pane appears, and there are quite a few options for formatting the chart title. If we select another element, for example the plot area, you see that the pane has changed its name, so now it's the Format Plot Area pane, and now we could format the plot area of the chart. In the Chart Elements box, or in this Chart Elements field, you can see all the chart elements that are currently active in our chart or are currently added to our chart. There are actually other chart elements that we could add to our bar chart. Let me actually close this pane on the right side. And notice when our chart is selected, or when an element of our chart is selected, then three buttons appear on the right side of the chart. Let's start actually with the second one, this brush, so it's the Chart Styles command. Let's click on it. Here is a list of predefined chart styles that we can choose. When I hover over my mouse over these predefined styles, then I see an instant preview of them. I will not select another style now, but I will click on the Color tab. Because our bars now are blue, so we only have one series, if I hover over different color options, then all the bars will change colors. But if we had several data series, and our bars would be in different colors, then actually the color of all the bars would change when I hover over these options. There are also monochromatic options, but we don't see much difference now between the two color options. So we have the colorful option and the monochromatic option, but now they are basically the same. I think later we will actually change the style of our chart and we will change the color of the bars as well, but now let's click on this filter icon. And this is a quick and easy way to filter our chart. Now we have only one data series, so of course I don't want to switch it off or filter it out. But for example, if you want to compare the Google ads, Facebook ads, and the TV ads, then we can just uncheck all the other categories. Click on Apply, and now only the Google ads, Facebook ads, and the TV ads are shown, so the bars are actually higher, bigger, and now we can focus on these three categories only. Now let me check all the other options as well. And I will again click on Apply. So now we have all the categories again. There is also a Names tab on this filter command. And actually we don't have much choice here, so we could say that we want to change the name of the series, but then the series would not have any name. Or we can do that with a category, but we either have the category names defined in column A, or we don't have any category names. Let's actually select none for the series and select none for the categories, and let's click on Apply. So now actually we don't have categories, so we just have numbers 7 to 1 or 1 to 7. And if you hover over a bar, you see that the series is now called 1. And instead of the categories, we have numbers as well. So point 4 means category 4 basically. Okay, so let's actually add some meaningful names for the series and the categories. So I will just check the row 1 option and the column A option and click on apply. And now we are back to normal. We have this third button as well, the chart elements button, and if I click on it, actually I get a list of the chart elements, both the active ones and the ones that are non-active for my bar chart. So the axis option is ticked, and of course I have the vertical axis and the horizontal axis. And if I click on this black arrow next to the axis option, then I see that both the primary vertical and primary horizontal axes are added or active. And of course the primary vertical is this one and the primary horizontal axis is this one, so the values. And if I uncheck them, then you see that they disappear. But of course I want to recheck them. If I click on more options, then again this pane for formatting the chart element appears, and now I can format an axis. So now my horizontal axis has been selected. You can see it here in the chart and see in the chart elements field as well. Let's close this pane actually, and let's get back to the chart elements. Now I could add axis titles, and you see that when I hover over this option, at the bottom of the chart a text appears, axis title, so that is the title for the horizontal axis, and there is also an axis title available for the vertical axis. And of course there are also formatting options for them. We have a chart title now, and of course we could also get this format chart title pane if we wanted. But actually if I click on this black arrow again, there are two instant options, so I can say that the title should be above the chart as it is now, but I could say that it could be a centered overlay, but it would not look good with our data now. Now actually if you want to edit the chart title, when it is selected you can just click into it and you can just change the text. Press enter. Oh sorry, not press enter. So if you press enter, you will actually add a new line, and we don't want that. So once you are finished with editing the title, then you can just click outside of it. And now the title has changed. But actually our column header didn't change, so they are not linked. The title is not linked to our table. Let's check the data labels chart element. Now I think that this would be a nice addition to our chart now. You see that based on the chart, we don't know exactly how much it costs to reach a customer through an ad channel. We would need to hover over the bars, but this is inconvenient, and maybe our chart is actually a picture in someone else's workbook or in a Word document, or it is a inserted picture in an email. And though we can infer the values approximately, I think it would be beneficial to activate the data labels. And I like it where they are by default, but of course if we click on this black arrow, there are some options, but I think that the default outside end option is the best for us. And don't forget that we can also go for more options, so the format data labels pane would appear, and we could even add the series name to it. Of course it doesn't really make much sense, but we could do that. And we could also add the category name to it, which doesn't make much sense either for our chart, but this is also a good option. There is also an option for the legend key, which is just a blue square now, so it doesn't help us much. But when you have multiple series, it can be actually helpful, and later we will see that. Let's go back to the chart elements command. There is also the data table option. We would get a table in addition to our chart, and I don't think that it's useful for now, because it would just make our chart smaller and it would not communicate more information, but it's good to know that there is this chart element as well that we could add to our bar chart. Of course there are more options for the data table as well. It could come with legend keys. A legend is some useful information that helps us understand the chart better when we have multiple series in the chart. But now we have only one data series, so the cost per customer in USD, so it doesn't really help us. But you see that the legend key actually is in the bottom left corner, so it is this blue square, so it comes in the same color as our bars, and it shows the series name. We could add a data table without legend keys as well. Oh, and actually, now I see that the legend key is actually only the blue square, so the series name would still be there in our data table. There are just so many options when it comes to charts that I just cannot remember all of them. But of course, it's always good to refresh my own knowledge as well. We could add error bars to our data, but actually it would not make sense. So error bars could give us info about the uncertainty in the measurement, but we really don't need them. But let's check the grid lines, and actually it is activated, so let's click on this black arrow. So you see that the primary major vertical grid lines are activated, and of course these are the grid lines that indicate the values. We could add primary major horizontal grid lines as well. You see the live preview, what the chart would look like, and I don't think it looks good actually. But we could add primary minor vertical grid lines as well, which actually could be helpful in interpreting our data better, but I don't think they are that necessary now. And we could also add the primary minor horizontal grid lines. They are actually displayed now on the live preview, but you might not be able to see it. It's very hard to see, and they are something that we don't need, of course. Now comes the option for the legend. So the blue square is the legend key, and then the text cost per customer USD is the series name, and we could put it to different places on our chart. We have only one series now in our chart, so we don't need a legend actually, but we could activate it. And now the last chart element that we could add are the trend lines. There are actually different trend lines in Excel, and you see that it doesn't really make sense to add trend lines to our data. But if you want to see the general pattern of your data, or if you want to forecast your data, then you would use trend lines. Now we know how to add elements to our chart or how to remove chart elements. We saw that there are a lot of formatting options for each chart element. We checked a few, but we didn't really get into much detail about them. There are a lot of formatting options, and it would just take too much time to go through them one by one. But still, let's check a few options. So let's go to the Format tab when the chart is selected. And let's check a few formatting options for the chart area, the plot area, and the data labels. Let's start with the chart area. You see this Shape Styles command group and the World Styles command group. They always refer to the chart element that is selected. While the chart area is selected and I hover over these options, you probably notice that the chart border is changing. So the color of the chart border is changing, but if I select another option, you see that the whole chart area is changing, so the color of the whole chart area is changing now. And there are of course additional options for the styles. And there are also word art styles, so these are the shape styles and these are the word art styles. And if I hover over them, you see that the text is changing. There are very fancy styles here, and of course there are also some more options for changing the word art styles. If I select another chart element here, for example, the series cost per customer USD, which are actually the bars, then you see that the bar colors are changing. We are still in the Shape Styles command group, but now these colors refer to the bars only. But let's get back to the chart area and let's click on Format Selection, so the Format Chart Area pane appears, and I will make it a bit wider. So we have some options for the fill, so we can give the chart a gradient fill, and once I give it a gradient fill, then other options appear, but I think I'm okay with the no fill option. There are also options for changing the border, but I think if I start changing these, then we will not see much. We can, for example, give a solid line border, and now you see that we have this solid blue line, but actually I don't need a border around our chart. We could also decide to give some cool effects to our charts, but to be honest, I don't really use these effects. And we also have some options for changing the size and the properties of our chart. There is also a text options tab, and here we also have many formatting options. So effects, for example, or text box options. So there are a lot of options for customizing the chart area. Now let's see what we have for the plot area. And you see that the pane title automatically changed to plot area, and the options now refer to the plot area only. We have fewer options for the plot area. We have the fill and line options and the effects as well. Now let me add a gradient fill to our plot area. Of course, we could change the color, but now you see that because only the plot area is selected, only the plot area has this gradient fill, and the chart area, so the area around it, doesn't have this gradient fill. But actually I'm fine with no fill, and I don't want to apply any effects. Now let's check the data labels. Now the pane's title is Format Data Labels, and we have label options and text options. And we have options for fill and line, effects, resizing, size and properties. And we also have the data label options, and I think we saw them already. Yeah, so we could change the label position, or we could add the legend key, which is not that useful for now. And we actually also have options for displaying the numbers. So you see now we have 5.88, 8.96. And actually we could say that we want to display these numbers as currencies. So now it's obvious that these numbers refer to US dollars. But we could change the symbol, the decimal places, and of course how the negative numbers appear. I will press Ctrl Z to undo this change. Actually, you see that the chart title makes it obvious that we're talking about dollars, and I think our chart looks better without the currency symbol. Because now the data labels are selected, you can see it in the chart, and you can see it on the Format tab as well. So you see that the data labels are selected. If I hover over the shape styles, then I could change the style of the data labels, or the word art styles, the character or the number styles. So you really have a lot of options if you want to have your own unique chart style. But I actually think that Excel is quite good at predefining styles. When we checked the chart styles button, then we saw that there are some predefined styles that we could choose from, and we could also change the color. But if we select the chart and then go to the Chart Design tab, we have the same options, or maybe even more. So now we have the chart styles here. If we select our chart and go to the Chart Design tab, you see that we have the Chart Styles group, and we have the predefined styles here as well. And we can change the colors here as well. We also have an option to add chart elements. Here we can activate or deactivate chart elements, and you see when I hover over the chart elements, then I get a live preview of them. So for example, this shows me what the chart would look like without primary horizontal axis or a primary vertical axis. But it would also show me what the chart would look like with the axis titles. Now actually this Add Chart Element button is doing the same as this Chart Elements button. But maybe you like the structure of the Add Chart Element command or button better. Let's get back to the Chart Design tab. Whenever I want to change the style of my chart, I usually start with a predefined style. And I like this one, so with the black background and the blue bars. This is style 7, and you see that actually the data labels were originally not included in my chart. But if I apply a different style to my chart, I will not lose my data labels, so I will just apply this style. I think this is easier on the eyes actually. And you know what, we could also change the colors of the bars. So let's make them orange or green maybe. Orange, I think it stands out a bit better. So I think that it's a good idea to start with a predefined style. And once you find a style that you like, Then you can select it, and then you can apply additional formatting to it so you can customize it even more. There are a lot of options for it. There are also some quick layouts, so some predefined layouts. These layouts do not change the style on your chart, but they do add elements to your chart or remove elements from your chart. For example, this layout would add a data table to our chart, and the layout or the quick layout above it would remove the horizontal axis. So now we don't see the values at the bottom. I think that the quick layouts and the predefined chart styles are great starting points to customize your chart. It saves you a lot of work, but it doesn't prevent you from modifying your chart even more. I think that we have reached a point where you know the most important commands pertaining to charts. Now you know how you can customize your chart or where you can find the customization options. But we also checked how you could modify the data. We checked, for example, these commands here on the Chart Design tab. We also talked about how the bar chart represents our current data. So I think we are ready to move on